Hello everybody and welcome back to another Armies on Parade, and today we're going to go through my Grail Cast Eternals, which are my Stormcast that I converted over to be Bretonnians. Now a lot of people had asked for Tomb Kings next, and I hear you, but I saved them for a reason. Don't worry, they are coming, but there's going to be something more special around the Tomb Kings since they're saying goodbye. And so I thought I would do this army first, which I am very proud of. And what I'll say is, even if you don't like Stormcast, maybe give it a watch, as I'm very proud of how I converted these over, and I like the way they came out, so maybe you will too. But if not, that's okay. Well, let's crack on. So what do we have here? We have our little Stormcast. So this is the very first Stormcast I did when I got these guys. This is the guy that came with the White Dwarf. And I had no idea what I wanted to do for basing or anything like that. I just kind of painted him, and I knew I wanted him to be in a color. I added a little cloak. And when I was just randomly messing around, I didn't really like their helmets. I never liked their face, like the sort of mask of the Stormcast. And so when I had this very first guy, I kind of was playing around, and I swapped his head out for a Bretonnian helm. And all of a sudden, he just looked so much better to me. I don't know what it was. It's just, there's something about this helm that actually looks like a helm as opposed to the weird sort of death masks. And when I painted this, when I was done, I thought, aha, I've got it. Now I know what I want to do. So that led me to want to convert a whole army over. So yeah, that was the inspiration. But the first unit is actually these girls. Their faces look very messed up in this picture, but they actually don't look that bad in reality. I don't know what it is. A subscriber to the channel had hooked me up with these girls. I always love these. These are, of course, Sisters of Sigmar. And so I thought, let's get them in the army too. So I did them all in this color scheme, somewhat reminiscent of the red and black and gold of the Sisters of Battle from 40k. But I wanted to get them in. You can see they are all now wielding the hammers. I've got two of them done up as sort of dual weapon liberators, and two of them done up as the big double-handed hammer guys. How sad is it that I can't even remember their name? It'll come to me. So retributors. There we go. It would come. I knew it'd come back to me eventually. And yeah, so I think they're pretty fun. And again, I kept these, more or less how they were. They're the old figs. They're metal, but I do love them in this army, even though they stand out and they're a little different. I don't care. They can kind of fit in however I want them to. So, and they're just some of my favorite figs that Games Workshop ever made. I do love them. All right, let's get into the actual Grail. So here's the first unit, and it's going to be emblematic of a lot of what I did with the army. So you can see here, these are liberators, and, I added cloaks, so all of them have cloaks that have been added, usually with green stuff. When I started this, I learned a lot about green stuff because I did a lot of green stuff cloaks, and I learned more about smoothing it out over time and stuff like that. I'm not super happy with how every one of these came out. But this army was all about freehand, and you can see here, first off, we got the head swap for the various Bretonnian knight helms that, of course, you're probably very used to or you've seen before. I also did a couple without the actual helm on because I like that look. I think that, makes it look human. Just having one guy without the helm on every so often does remind you that there are humans underneath there. I think maybe that's why the real badasses in 40k don't wear their helms. Makes them look more human. These guys are done. Their armor was done with a little pearl pigment. This army was also my big chance to experiment with paint schemes. So this army does not have a unified color scheme. Every unit has its own individual color scheme. Every 5-pack or 3-pack or whatever it was I was painting has their own individual color scheme because they are representative of Bretonnia. And so each one is allowed, just as the way Bretonnian knights can be the sort of cacophony of colors, I wanted all of these to be their own sort of individual, unique snowflake units as well. And so I experimented with a lot of stuff. Different paints, different paint types and techniques, and all sorts of just crazy things like that. I just didn't hold back because in the end, it was fun to just simply try and see what we could do. So this is white paint with a little pearl pigment mixed into it, which is a really interesting thing, this Pearl X powdered pigment, which gives it that weird sheen you see the white have. You can kind of see it in the picture. It's interesting. It definitely deserves some more experimentation. The other thing you notice here is that, of course, this is, and you're going to see this on every one of them, is that I dremeled off the hammer and lightning bolts and freehanded on my own pattern onto the shields. So these have a, sort of, I did a bunch of different fleur-de-lis and stuff like that. And I think it makes them fun, and it makes them feel much more Bretonnian. Also, all the hammers and things were scraped off their shoulder pads, and that was all sanded down, and, all of those kinds of things. So I like these guys. In the end, the pearl pigment needs a little more work, because it's a little chalky, like in some places, and it kind of is a little rough. I think I might have mixed in a little too much. This was my first time ever using it. But, hey, it's okay. It's all fun to learn. I'm also really not happy with the size of the design on their cloaks. Should have done that much bigger. Alright, so the second group of liberators. This is the only guy in the army who has the actual Stormcast helm, is the guy over on the right, like the normal mask. Because that weird fig, it's all attached to his arm, and he was too difficult to cut up. So I just kind of left him with that one. Makes him, I guess he's the one guy who got a weird helm when he got remade as a Grail Cast. They ran out of the normal helmets and had to give him one of the stock standard ones. I'm very happy with the freehand design that was on these guys. I think it looks pretty good. I enjoy it, the little sword with the circles around it. This is my unit, mainly, again, like even with mixing the weapons, I don't care. It doesn't bother me any. I'm not a huge guy for WYSIWYG, so I wanted to give one of them a lance because it was fun to me. They got swords on their hips, whatever you can say, they're armed with swords. They've all got their shields, that's what's important to me. And, so that's this unit. The interesting thing about this color is that it is done, they look all gold, but in fact, if you rotate them in the light, they will change color. And you can kind of see the sheen of purple just coming off of the top of the reflection on the shoulder pads, if you look closely. These are all sprayed with Spastics, like color change paint. So, like, if you ever had a Hot Wheels car where, like, it would sort of change color in water or whatever, or in heat, same thing here. That's what this paint is meant to achieve, except that, like, it just rotates color as you shift it through the light. So as you turn the fig, it'll look a different color from different angles. Probably works better on big, like RC cars than it does on small miniatures. In the end, I found it was just a little difficult to work with. I had to do, like, my God, so many coats of it to even make the color shift happen at all. I mean, seriously, this was like 15, 16 very thick coats with an airbrush. And this stuff is toxic as all get out. So that's less fun. But, again, fun experimentation, and that's what this army afforded me a chance to do. Just try a bunch of crazy stuff, see what you like, see what works. Okay, so here I wanted the knights, the wolf knights here. I wanted them to be a little more earthy, more naturey, so I gave them all the fur cloaks out of the old Empire kit. One guy does have like a green stuff cloak as well, and the guy without his helm on has got the big shaggy beard and stuff. I'm very happy again with the freehand design on these guys' shields. I like the wolf and the moon. Thought that came out pretty well. Very standard. Other than that, did the head swaps, sanded everything down. Each one of these units actually took quite a while just because of all the dremeling and sanding and all of that stuff. But I rather like how these turned out. I think these might be, maybe my favorite unit of liberators. Just because I think the color scheme works the best, and I like the freehand on this one the best. Alright, these are my only other, besides the two girls you saw in the Sisters of Sigmar, these are my only retributors. I gave one of them 2 hammers. Why? Because it made me laugh. One of them is still the really big hammer. I just literally dremeled off one of his hands, so he's holding the giant hammer in one hand. And the other 2 are there. I tried something a little different with sort of the non-metallic gold. It was a bit of an experiment to see if I could make it work in a certain way. It didn't really work. It doesn't come up high enough to the highest whites, and that's the problem. So probably more experimentation, but that being said, these guys look okay. I certainly don't think they're bad. I just think that in the end they don't quite really look like they're in gold. They look like more they're in like ceramic armor or something like that, which is cool, but it would be better if it actually looked gold, which it does not. So that's all right. Alright, so now we get into my prosecutors. I have a lot of prosecutors, let me tell you what. I got a pretty wicked ripping deal on flying dudes, so you're going to see a lot of these guys. I like my prosecutors standing on stuff. sometimes at weird angles because they're landing or flying in or whatever. These are my fiery prosecutors. This was also an experiment with the Spastics paint. This one just did not work at all. There's no color shift to these guys, so that made me very sad. So they just kind of look like they're wearing bronze armor, which is fine, I guess. Obviously, the fire wings are what it's really all about, and I like how that came out. I think that looks decent. I think it probably I need to take like the red-orange spectrum in tighter and have less of the yellow. I think that's probably the main issue. So it looks more like the fire that the guy in back is standing on. And of course, we head swapped all of these for regular, non-helmed heads, which I thought was fun. Used the flagellant head with the flamey top on back. I thought that was rather apropos. But this group was fun to do and fun to play around with for the weird fire knights. And believe me, you're going to see a lot more flying dudes standing on stuff. I'm sure Tom, if he watches this, is going to lose his mind because he hates when I do this, and I did a lot. Alright, so here is my tribute to Flash Gordon. As you can see, these are my gold-winged Hawkmen out of Flash Gordon. These are extremely simple color scheme. I wanted these to stay white. I didn't want real color on them. Because if you go look at the guys from Flash Gordon, they're basically all this sort of copper color, along with like black. But I didn't want black because I just don't think it would pop enough at miniature size, so I wanted white, so I had something at least standing out, even though it's not a color in the traditional sense. But I actually rather like these guys. They're like I said, for an experiment in monotone, the reflectivity of their armor is pretty good, and I like the way the wings look, and I feel like it goes up to a bright enough reflection. So yeah, I would say I'm actually rather happy with these. And again, just standing on a bunch of different stuff, swooping in at weird angles because I think Ant said on one of his recent videos on the Sustainable Center, he said that figs are a capture of a moment in time, right? And I think that's exactly how I treated a lot of these guys. Like this guy over here on the right, he's clearly not standing at that angle. That's him coming in for a landing. And, if you think about how he would land, his feet would touch and then he would right himself as his wings swooped one last time. So that's just a second before that happens. That's how I think about it, at least. Yes, my purple and magenta knights. I love these guys. These are I wanted a group that had javelins or whatever, so I gave them all lances for my Bretonnian javelins, of course. And the shield emblem design on this came about when Tom, my host from Warhammer Weekly, was talking about there's some elvish shield that has like a heart with a sword through it, and I was like, you should just draw it. And he's like, I don't want to draw it. I said, it's really easy. So then I did these that day. So yeah, it's pretty easy. And I'm not saying that like what I did here is incredible art, but it's fine. It looks like a heart with a sword through it. I rather like their wings, just the hint of purple and pink in their white wings, and I especially like the guy jumping forward at the camera. He's a little fuzzed because he's so leaping forward, but I love him leaping off the rock and into action. All right, these guys. So these are my sort of blue pastel metallics. I like the way their wings came out, and this was really a landmark unit. The reason this unit is so important is because this is the first time I really used the plasma fluid from Badger Minotaur's Ghost Tint line. And this is the unit that I painted that made me want to do a whole army in this color scheme. I flippin' love this blue color and the way it pops, and I was like, that's it, I gotta do a whole army like this. And that's one of the things that inspired me to do the Zinj army for the budget of Sigmar. And to use that paint heavily and to have it be the main color throughout that blue color. So I was super excited to... I loved this unit still, and I was very glad to do a whole army in this color scheme and inspired. Ironic that it inspired both a Chaos army and that it inspired the army I ended up using all of the Sigmarine helms on. So there you go. Huh. Call up Alanis Morissette. We've got another thing to add to the song. And then the final group here, with you might a clever viewer might notice that a couple of these guys are not actually prosecutor bodies. I had a couple extra liberators and was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. They look okay, mounted on the ground. They're sitting there with their wings. Seems fine to me. And this one I wanted to try it with the green. I think I actually did these guys next, but I wasn't as happy with this green and how it came out, so unfortunately. I think they look okay, but the sort of minty green here, I didn't do it as well as Victor did. These feel like a poor imitation of Victor's fantastic army, so... but I did start these before Victor started his. I just want to say that. Not that he stole anything from me. No. Not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, completely independent of me, he did something much better. That's all I'm saying. Alright, so next up we've got my Judicators, the little bow guys. These are actually, again, converted liberators that I just hacked up and green stuffed and things like that. I think they look okay. I wanted to use the men-at-arms archer heads, and I think they actually come out looking really well. The ones with the bigger helms, for example, the guy in the foreground there, I think looks the best, like he belongs. The one in the back right, he's very fuzzy and you can really see him, but he's the one that I think looks the worst because he kind of has tiny head syndrome. When you use like a normal head on these big, super heavy armored bodies, and they don't have anything on their head, they look a little funny. But as long as they got something on their head, any kind of helm, anything that increases the girth of their head, I think it comes out a lot better. I like these guys. They're sort of, again, in the same color scheme, these very earthy tones of the other unit of liberators, because I thought, hey, they were men-at-arms, they were huntsmen in life, they would favor earthy tones in their unit here, because that's their connection to their old life. Alrighty. So now it's time to get into the characters. That's all the troops. Let's talk characters. So this is my my lantern fly guy. Let's call him... See, there's the Knight Azeros and the Knight Venator, and I can never... Or whatever. Vexillor. Sorry, not Venator. That'll come later. The Vexillor and the Azeros. I'm going to say Vexillor. I'm probably guessing wrong. But this guy's obviously just a conversion out of the normal prosecutor. Plus the extra bits you get from the Azeros, Vexillor, Venator. How do you keep all these straight? I have this army, I still can't keep them straight. It's the flying guy with the lantern. That's what's important. Doesn't matter. Anyways, you get a bunch of extra components. And so, like, you have the lantern extra and stuff like that. So, I thought this would be the guy. And, I'm looking at this, and I realize I never talked about the wings, because it's so second nature to me. So, let me go ahead and back up and talk about that for a second. You may have also noticed that none of my prosecutors, nor this guy, or any of my flying guys, use the standard techno wings. I hate those techno wings, and think that they're terrible. So that's how to think about that. And so I wanted to use different wings, and so these are feathered Scourge wings out of 40k, I think from Dark Eldar, if I remember correct. And I ordered a bunch of these, and I think they are perfect. I love these wings. I love the way they look. I love you can put them in a lot of different angles to make them look like they're flapping sort of in various ways. If you wanted to get really creative, you could even like heat them up and bend them and such quite easily, I suspect. I did not do that, but I don't think it would be that hard. And so all of my flying guys have these feathered wings, which I think gives them a much more angelic look. And I dig that much more than the techno wing look. So there's that. On this guy's obviously got the Bretonnian sword and that sort of thing. And every so often I'll do some shoulder pad swaps, so he's got 2 actual shoulder pads from the Bretonnian kit as well, along with his little lantern. So here's the other half of that kit. Whichever one I said before, this is the other one. I don't know their names. I can't remember. And he is... I truly love this guy. Man, I love the cast on this dude. I love the way he's floating up in the air. I love his little birdie. His birdie is adorable. I'm not sure if I ended up putting the bird in the exact same spot they tell you to. I don't think I actually did. I just like him better up there, as though he's like literally going to follow the shot. And that's kind of how I thought about it. Like, this dude shoots, and then the bird just follows the arrow into his target. But I like this guy. I like the blue tint to the metal. And it's subtle, but it comes out, I think, in just the right way for my tastes. And I do love the little bird. I could just do a whole army of those little adorable birds. So here's my Knight Heraldor. Sounds right. So this guy is I managed to pick up about 8 Lord Relictors or something. So a lot of my characters are just conversions of Lord Relictors because I got them on the super cheap, and I built this whole army quite on the cheap, I might add, and I think it comes out okay. I had the extra Bretonnian bits, the base. Anybody that was out of the base box set, you could get the bits for just ridiculously cheap. So, like most of these characters, I was getting for $1 or $2. So I would call that a square deal any way you cut it. Plus, I love the Relictor's like angelic halos over his head and his shoulder. Again, switch to the standard Knight Helm, which I like that one, sort of the one without any kind of headdress on it. I think it's simple but effective. And this guy obviously has a big Bretonnian banner with some freehand on it, and then the little topper that is the reliquary. So I rather like how he came out, and I kept his little bony pieces on there because I don't. In the end, it actually seemed very appropriate to me for a lot of the characters to have these little bones tied to them, as what that is it's a reliquary thing, and that's very much a thing of like the saints and that sort of thing that these armies are all playing toward. The Bretonnians carried around a dead knight, for God's sakes, and it was a unit. But the idea of carrying like the bones of saints is not a weird concept in the history of humanity. Seems a bit strange now in the modern world, but it was a very, very big and commonly practiced thing. So I thought, yeah, why not? The Grail Cast often strap the bones of their saints or their maybe it's even their former bodies, huh? How about that? To themselves. So yeah, there you go. So that's the Heraldor. And then this guy is the, let's say, Vexillor, I guess, the one with the horn. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I like this dude again. This was very much an experiment in sort of traditional non-metallic metal. And I rather like how this came out. I think it looks quite shiny and pretty nice. The sword needs more white edge to it. That's a real problem there. I didn't take the sword doesn't have the hard white edges it needs to really pop. But I like mixing non-metallic metal steel with metallic gold. I don't know why I like that, but something about the look. This guy's also got you can't really see it, but he's also got that big swoopy cloak from 40k, which I managed to pick up like just in some random bit slot and used here. But this guy's fun, and I like the red. I think it came out rather fun. So here we've got my Green Lantern, and again, whatever. Name irrelevant, but he's got his Gryph-hound. And when I saw that there was a guy who had a lantern on foot in the army, and Lord Castellan or whatever, by the way, and I saw that there's a guy with a lantern, and I was making it after Bretonnia, and Bretonnia had a Green Knight. Well, you do the math. It's obvious. He's got to be the Green Lantern. So this guy was just sort of a very straightforward conversion. I kept his big halberd thing because I thought it actually looked pretty cool, and it felt somewhat lance-like, which I thought was appropriate for this guy. But we actually have 2 picks of him because then also on his back we did some freehand, and for his Gryph-hound I gave him a little cloak, and we did, of course, the Green Lantern symbol on there, which was just a little in-joke to myself. Green Lantern never really had a dog. Sadly, he kind of had a pet, but I think it was a cat. So that's disappointing. No Crypto or Ace the Bat Hound for him. Shame. Okay, so this was actually the first individual character I painted for this army, and this is actually my Lord Relictor. And I really like the Lord Relictor here. He has the giant Bretonnian banner, as you can see. That thing is metal, by the way. So it weighs about a ton, and this Fig is not well balanced, I'm not going to lie. Even as far forward as I pushed him, this guy, if he's on an uneven surface, still likes to tip a little bit. So I have to be very careful with him. I even weighted down the bottom of his base with like a washer, and it's that metal banner is so at a weird angle, and such just a solid piece of, pewter or lead or whatever. But I love how this guy came out. Again, I like the blue, I like the cream on the banner, and I think this was again one of the things that convinced me that I could sort of do this army, because it sort of showed me yes I could convert these things. Because it was the first one, I didn't sand it down as much as I probably should have. Like I didn't sand the little comet piece off of his sort of left arm. I don't know what would you call it, like his shoulder pad chest guard connector there. in the other versions of this guy that I use, I always sanded off that double-sided comet and drew in something new, freehanded something new. But this time it was still kind of the first time, and so you learn as you go. And I'm all about just you just crack on. Who cares? Get into it. You'll figure it out later. That's what I say. So this is my Lord Stellastar on Dracoth, and modified, obviously to have a lance because good Bretonnian lords have lances. He's got the helm, but I still loved the mohawk, so I had to bring that in there. I should have chopped the little hammer off the front, but hey, you live and learn. I've used this fig a couple more times. I actually used him and converted him very heavily for my lord on Hippogriff for my actual Bretonnian army, because why not have two basic Bretonnian armies? And this is one of the first things I did that was actually a little mini diorama. I really, really love this guy. There's one glaring thing I hate, but that's okay. I truly love this guy, and if you look down in the center of his base, you can see the hand reaching out of the water and offering up the sword, very Lady of the Lake style. To me, that was what this is all about. I actually called this. I was like, I want to call this piece the gift. I don't normally name my models or my anything, but I really did love this guy, and I really loved how he turned out with the gray of the Dracoth and the blue and red, the very classic Bretonnian Lord colors of that blue and red. If you think about your Bretonnian covers of both books, the character on there was in blue and red, so I wanted to stick to that. What I don't like is that little plastic card / thing or whatever that's supposed to be on the back of him that I tried to put a new symbol on. That was dumb. I should have just freehanded onto the metal. That would have been the right thing to do, but now it's glued on there and it's melted into the plastic, and so whatever. There we are. That's like that now. You live and learn. I think I have a shot of this guy because this was also a fun attempt at some freehand cloak. So this uses both brocade patterning, on the cloak as well as the freehand of those gems. And all of that is freehand. None of that is actual sculpt in the model. So I was very happy with how that came out. I really think that's doing like those freehand gems made me think, it's honestly really easy, by the way. Doing like that sort of freehand gem pattern, I'd highly recommend you give it a try. I was honestly surprised I had never done it before, but it's really pretty simple. Like, if you can draw a circle and you know how to paint a normal gem, that is to say you start dark on one side and you kind of bring it up to light at the bottom and then do a little dot, you pretty much can make the illusion of sort of gems on cloth. And so that's something I might experiment more with in the future because I think it looks pretty decent, and it was actually super fun to do. And then the Big Daddy himself. This is my favorite model I've ever converted, maybe my favorite model I've ever painted. I love this guy to death. This is my Stellastar Prime, and this is the Risen Gilles Le Breton. And so this piece is called The Return. And I wanted to really capture what the Stellastar Prime for the Grail Cast would be. And to me, I loved Gilles, his return in the end times, and I was sad that he didn't get any more involvement in the story. When he came back in Chapter 1 of Nagash, or Chapter 0, whatever, I really was so excited to see what they were going to do with him because he's such this legendary figure. I mean, obviously he's the King Arthur of that world. And the fact that he got short-shrifted said to me, we need to bring him back. So this is converted out of a prosecutor and the big hammer from probably the Lord on Dracoth. I honestly don't even remember. It might be like a retributor hammer. The wings are from Eltharian's griffin. The head is from the noble outriders or pistoliers or whatever. There's, they have because they're supposed to be young nobles. So one of them has big swoopy flowing Fabio model hair. The helm is one of the Bretonnian helms. Every so often, every couple Bretonnian helms in the regular night box had a crown. That helm is gold. Gold! Save those if you got them. They're so good when you need to do a king figure or something. And so he's holding the helm and rising up. The cloak is from the Raging Heroes Twins Standard Bearer kit that has their cloak flipping up behind them. It's actually I just inverted it. It normally goes up to the point, but now it's down. to its connection point, and obviously at the bottom is the Garden of Moor with its little scene there. But I saw that as like his tomb that he is rising up from, and, you know, ready to ascend and take his place in the heavens to lead the Grail Cast into a bold new future in the Age of Sigmar. Again, I love the way the wings turn out with the white, with the purple and the pink hints in them. The cloak is such a wonderful cast from Raging Heroes, and I think it really just like, I love all the folds and detail in there. They made it look so flowing and natural. It was really a pleasure to paint. I spent hours, you know, just sort of glazing and highlighting and stuff. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean, like, the time passed so quickly because it was so much fun to do. Because every little fold is so well detailed and the little ridges and such. There's a little closer shot of him. You can see as he rises up out of his grave, holding his helm and his crown, ready to take his place in the heavens. A little bit of a zoom in on the Garden of Moor. I wanted the graves to look fresh. I assumed he was buried next to, like, his, you know, sort of attendants, right? That would make sense. So I wanted some sort of fresher graves with the same purple flowers that played up to him with his cloak. Purple being the color of royalty, of course, and so very important to have a lot of purple all over this. And then there we go, the close-in zoom-up shot. And that is the final shot of the army. There you go. The Grail Cast Eternals. I hope that even if you don't like Stormcast normally, maybe you like this army. They certainly made me like Stormcast. I will admit there are plenty of things I don't like about them. I don't like the face masks. I don't like the techno wings. But I don't think that should let it stop you, because there's a lot of things about the army I do like, and conversions are fun. And it was fun to do so much with this army and always have each unit be its own little unique and beautiful snowflake. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, we'll see you next time.